This story was never meant to come out. Behind closed doors, Hollywood's most controlled superstar was facing a choice that could destroy everything to women. One decision and zero room for mistakes. No cheating rumors, no public fights, just silent tension, secret meetings, and a heartbreak that happened before anyone even knew there was a relationship. This isn't gossip. This is the love triangle Hollywood tried to hide. Hollywood wasn't ready for this twist. Just when fans thought they had finally understood Tom Cruise's carefully guarded personal life, subtle whispers began spreading across red carpets, film sets, and social media timelines. There were no explosive headlines at first, no shocking paparazzi photos, just quiet speculation, the kind that slowly grows louder the more people try to ignore it. Suddenly, the world's most private superstar found himself at the center of a story no one saw coming. A possible love triangle involving Armas and another rising Hollywood star. For decades, Tom Cruise has mastered the art of privacy. While his professional life has always lived under the brightest spotlight, his personal world has remained locked away. No public drama, no emotional interviews, no cryptic social media posts. In an industry built on exposure, his silence became his strongest shield. And that's exactly why this moment felt different. Because this time, the silence wasn't calming, it was suspicious. It all began with a few unexpected sightings that were easy to dismiss at first. Tom Cruise and Ana de Armas were spotted together, not at crowded events or promotional appearances, but in quiet, almost hidden settings. Private dinners away from the usual hotspots. Low-key meetings that looked more personal than professional. Brief moments of laughter, focused conversations, and lingering smiles that cameras barely managed to capture. Nothing was ever officially confirmed, yet everything about their presence together felt intentional. Fans didn't know what to believe. Some called it coincidence. Others suspected an upcoming project. But those who watched closely noticed something else: a comfort, unease, a sense of mutual respect that couldn't be scripted. Ana de Armas, known for her emotional depth and independent spirit, seemed perfectly aligned with Tom's preference for discretion. Together, they looked less like two celebrities seeking attention and more like two individuals protecting something fragile. And just as curiosity began to settle into quiet acceptance, the story took an unexpected turn. Another name began circulating. Another star. Another presence quietly entering Tom Cruise's already complicated emotional space. Unlike the calm, understated moments shared with Ana, this connection carried a different energy, familiar, emotionally layered, and impossible to ignore. Industry insiders noticed the timing, the overlapping moments, the subtle shifts in behavior that suggested something was changing behind the scenes. That's when the narrative stopped being simple. This was no longer a story about rumors or chance encounters. It became a story about emotional crossroads, about a man caught between two paths, each leading to a very different future. One represented new beginnings, possibility, and quiet hope. The other carried history, understanding, and emotional gravity. And true to Tom Cruise's nature, there were no public explanations, no clarifications, no denials, just continued silence, the kind that forces the world to watch more closely, listen more carefully, and read between every line, because sometimes The most powerful stories aren't told through words. They're revealed through what's left unsaid. Ana de Armas has become one of Hollywood's most admired stars, talented, graceful, and fiercely independent. Her rise in the industry wasn't sudden or accidental. It was steady, earned, and built on performances that spoke louder than publicity ever could. With every role, she proved that she wasn't just another rising face, but an actress with depth, discipline, and a clear sense of self. That's why, when rumors first began linking her to Tom Cruise, fans were surprised, but more than that, they were intrigued. At first glance, the pairing didn't feel obvious. Tom Cruise represents decades of global stardom, intense precision, and carefully controlled public presence. Ana, on the other hand, carries a quieter kind of power, grounded, emotionally expressive, and deeply private in her own way. Yet when the two were seen together, the chemistry didn't feel forced or theatrical. It felt natural, not loud, not performative, just calm. The kind of calm that suggests understanding rather than attraction built for cameras. According to sources close to the industry, their connection went far beyond shared screen time or professional curiosity. They reportedly bonded over long conversations, mutual respect for their craft, and a shared belief that storytelling matters more than celebrity status. Both are known for their strong work ethics and their reluctance to overshare personal details with the public. In a world that constantly demands access, that shared boundary may have brought them closer than anyone realized. When they were together, there were no attention-seeking appearances, no coordinated outfits designed to spark headlines, no staged entrances or perfectly timed exits. Instead, there were quiet moments, brief dinners away from crowded spaces, low-key interactions, and subtle gestures that suggested comfort and trust. Nothing about their time together screamed romance, yet everything about it hinted at something emotionally real. What truly made this connection feel different was the complete absence of publicity strategy. There were no interviews addressing the rumors, no playful social media posts, no attempt to shape a narrative. In Hollywood, where even the smallest relationship detail can become a marketing opportunity, that kind of silence often speaks volumes. It suggested that if something was happening, it wasn't meant for public consumption. As fans slowly began warming up to the idea of Tom Cruise and Ana de Armas, imagining a relationship built on maturity, respect, and shared values, the story took a quieter, more complicated turn behind the scenes. Because emotional connections rarely exist in isolation. While the public focused on what they could see, Tom Cruise appeared to be navigating something far more complex internally. Subtle shifts in behavior, changes in proximity, moments that hinted at emotional division rather than certainty. It became increasingly clear that he wasn't emotionally standing in just one place. And that realization changed everything. Because once emotions are split, even the most genuine connection is forced to face an uncomfortable truth. Clarity doesn't always arrive when feelings do. Every love triangle needs a turning point, and this was it. Just as public attention began quietly circling around Tom Cruise and Ana de Armas, another presence entered the story, shifting its emotional balance. Around the same time Tom was being linked to Ana, he was also reportedly spending time with another well-known actress, someone equally respected, equally accomplished, and firmly established within Hollywood's inner circles. This wasn't a newcomer chasing attention. This was a woman with her own legacy, her own voice, and her own history. Unlike the understated, almost invisible moments shared with honor, this second connection felt noticeably louder. Industry insiders began to notice an increase in interactions, longer conversations on set, private meetings that extended beyond professional necessity, and a familiarity that didn't need explanation. Nothing was ever explicit. No public confirmation. No dramatic displays. Yet it was impossible to ignore the emotional weight behind those interactions. There was a difference in energy. Where honor represented something new and open-ended. This second star seemed to carry a shared past, a mutual understanding built over time. Conversations didn't need introductions. Silences didn't feel awkward. There was an ease that only comes from history, from knowing someone beyond the surface. And with that familiarity came something else, the possibility of unfinished emotions. That's when the narrative quietly shifted from speculation to something deeper. Suddenly, people close to the situation began asking the question no one wanted to say out loud. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was deeply human. Was Tom Cruise torn between two worlds? On one side stood Ana de Armas, fresh energy, quiet confidence, and a future that felt open rather than defined. Being with her symbolized growth, emotional risk, and the excitement of discovering something new. It wasn't about certainty. It was about possibility. On the other side was familiarity, emotional comfort, shared understanding, and the safety of what was already known. This connection didn't require explanation or adjustment. It offered stability, emotional fluency, and the reassurance of walking a path that had been walked before. Hollywood has seen this story countless times. Careers may be extraordinary, but emotional crossroads are universal. When timing collides with feeling, even the most decisive individuals hesitate. Choice is become heavier, silence grows longer, and clarity feels just out of reach. Tom Cruise has built his career on control, discipline, and precision. He's known for making calculated decisions, on screen and off. Yet this moment reminded everyone of an uncomfortable truth. Emotional conflict doesn't respond to strategy. It doesn't follow scripts. And it doesn't care about reputation, despite his image of confidence and certainty. Tom Cruise is still human. And like anyone caught between the promise of something new and the comfort of something familiar, he faced a decision that couldn't be rushed, because whatever he chose, something meaningful would inevitably be left behind. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't public. They happen quietly, between memory and possibility. Here's where the story shifts, because this was never about betrayal, cheating, or scandal. Unlike the typical celebrity love triangles that dominate headlines with public fights, leaked messages, and dramatic accusations, this situation unfolded almost entirely in silence. There were no angry statements, no subtle online jabs. No one claimed ownership or demanded explanations in front of the world. In fact, the most noticeable element of this entire story was how little anyone involved said at all. And that silence reveals something important. This was never about choosing between two women. It was about choosing between two versions of life, two emotional directions that couldn't exist at the same time. One path offered excitement, possibility, and emotional growth. It came with risk, uncertainty, and the vulnerability of stepping into something new. This was the path that invited change, a future still unwritten, where discovery mattered more than comfort. The other path offered understanding, familiarity, and emotional safety. It carried shared history, mutual awareness, and the ease that comes from not having to explain yourself. This version of life didn't promise surprise. It promised stability. And for someone who has spent decades navigating pressure, expectations, and constant scrutiny, that kind of emotional refuge can be incredibly powerful. According to sources close to the situation, Tom Cruise struggled, not because he wanted attention or drama, but because he genuinely didn't want to hurt anyone. The hesitation wasn't manipulation. It was conflict, the kind that happens when every option feels meaningful, and every outcome carries emotional weight. And it was Ana de Armas who seemed to understand this first. Known for her emotional intelligence and quiet self-awareness, Ana reportedly sensed the uncertainty long before it was ever spoken aloud. She noticed the pauses, the emotional distance, the lack of clarity that no words could disguise. And rather than demanding answers or forcing a decision, she chose something rare in Hollywood: restraint. Instead of chasing certainty, she stepped back, not out of weakness, but out of self-respect. That single choice changed the entire narrative. It removed pressure, it exposed the truth, and it allowed the situation to end without bitterness or blame. Sometimes, walking away isn't a loss. It's an act of emotional strength. This is why the story never exploded into scandal. There was nothing to accuse, nothing to expose, just people trying to navigate feelings with as much care as possible. Sometimes, love doesn't end because it fails. Sometimes, it ends because timing refuses to cooperate, because clarity arrives too late, because emotions don't align with circumstance, because even genuine connections can't survive uncertainty forever. And in a world obsessed with dramatic endings, this story stands out precisely because of how quietly it unfolded, reminding us that the most powerful heartbreaks are often the ones no one ever sees. So where does this leave us now? As of today, nothing has been officially confirmed. No relationship announcements, no carefully worded denials, no dramatic revelations designed to control the narrative. And yet, the story refuses to disappear. It continues to exist in the quiet spaces between what the public sees and what remains unspoken, between headlines and reality, between assumption and truth. In an industry where clarity is often manufactured for convenience, this uncertainty feels unusual. There are no clear villains, no public winners, just unanswered questions and emotional echoes that linger long after the cameras move on. Ana de Armas has remained firmly focused on her career, moving forward with confidence and grace. Her public presence reflects strength, independence, and self-assurance, not loss. If anything, she appears grounded, choosing growth over speculation. She doesn't revisit the story. She doesn't redefine it. She simply continues, reminding everyone that sometimes the most powerful response is silence paired with progress. Tom Cruise, meanwhile, continues exactly as the world expects, immersed in his work, precise, disciplined, and private. Yet beneath that familiar image may exist emotions the public will never fully understand. For someone who has spent a lifetime separating personal feeling from public identity, Carrying unresolved emotions quietly may be the only option. Not everything needs closure in front of an audience. And then there is the other star, still respected, still relevant, still present in Tom's emotional orbit. Whether romantically or simply as a meaningful connection. Her role in this story remains undefined, not because it lacks importance, but because some relationships resist labels. They exist beyond explanation, shaped more by history and understanding than by visibility. This story matters because it strips away the illusion that fame protects people from emotional uncertainty. Even the biggest stars face the same crossroads as everyone else, the same doubts, the same hesitation, the same fear of choosing wrong. Celebrity doesn't eliminate emotional complexity. It simply hides it behind discipline and silence. Sometimes love isn't about choosing the right person. Sometimes it's about choosing the right moment. And sometimes there is no perfect choice at all. Only decisions made with the information, emotions, and timing available at that moment. Hollywood craves clear endings, clean narratives, final answers that fit neatly into headlines. But real life rarely cooperates. Real stories don't always conclude with certainty. Some fade quietly, some remain unresolved, and some stay with us simply because they reflect our own emotional experiences. Maybe that's why this story continues to captivate so many people. Not because of the fame, not because of the speculation, but because behind the celebrity, names and flashing lights lies something deeply familiar. The humanity of people trying to navigate love, timing, and choice without hurting those involved. And in the end, that's the story that truly stays with us.